Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of not just the Locked On Padres podcast, but also the Locked On Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Tuesday, October 1st. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We are in October. It is playoff time. Padres, Braves. I am one of your hosts, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipedio, JAVIIPENO, rocking the Padres gear. You can also check out my work over at Just Baseball, a lovely website, and also check out my other podcast, Baseball vs. the World. And I'm joined by the host of Locked On Braves. He's been a champion before. He's been out of the playoffs before. He's been through it all. Jake Mastriani of Locked On Braves. Sir, how are you doing and how excited are you?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Excited to be here. A little tired. The Braves had to make us sweat it out to the last day, but yeah, we're in the postseason. We got a chance. Here we go. What can we do? Who's going to pitch?
Absolutely, man. Who is going to pitch? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about all the big matchups, under the radar things, biggest storylines, who's got the advantage of this series, all sorts of stuff. A big old grand, spanking, majestic, effervescent, magical playoff preview we've got here for you. I try to come up with as many words as I could at the top of my head. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you, though, by PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And if you couldn't tell, that little sponsorship icon in the top right for folks on YouTube. Jake, let's start with the most recent news, because this is rare in baseball. That game 162 absolutely mattered. There was a doubleheader between the Mets and Braves that decided not only which one of those two made the playoffs, but if there was a sweep on either side, the D-backs would have been eliminated. Of course, that did not happen. Farewell, Arizona. I'm sorry, Millard Thomas, my guy of Locked On D-backs. But biggest storyline is, first of all, what a preview of playoff quality baseball with that game. Just an amazing back-to-back game. Like unbelievable stuff from the Braves offense to, genuinely great pitching. And then, Francisco Lindor taking the lead again, all sorts of stuff. But on top of that, I want you to talk about that game, as well as the news that not only was Chris Sale scratched from what was supposed to be his start in the second game and what became a must-win for the Braves, but also reportedly he may miss some playoff time. So what's kind of dig into that? Where are we exactly with Chris Sale and the rest of the Braves team?
Yeah, Monday was a microcosm of the 2024 season for the Braves. You finally get some good offense that we've been hoping for all year long. You get great starting pitching, which has been the staple of this team. And then you finally get some offense late, with the bullpen just absolutely falls apart, and you lose game one, and then you get an injury news. And isn't that so 2024 for the Atlanta Braves, who have lost Spencer Strider, who have lost Ronald Acuna Jr., who are without Austin Riley, who they've lost Ozzie Albies for 2 months at a time. They've lost Michael Harris for 2 months at a time. They've had time without Max Fried, time without Ronaldo Lopez. They've lost AJ Minter for the year. I mean, it's what more can this Braves team take? And in a game that you had to have, you lose to Cy Young, you lose Chris Sale in between that. And it's just, Braves fans are happy to be here. It's been a painful season for Braves fans. And just, it's with everything that has gone on and all of the talent that you've lost, all the fun that you've lost from this team. I mean, those guys that I mentioned, that's why you go to the ballpark. That's why you watch this team, to see those players. And even Snicker said it afterwards. I mean, they got it done with the rejects. I mean, and they picked up Ramon Laureano, who was dropped by the Guardians. They picked up Whit Merrifield, who was dropped by the Phillies. I mean, they've taken in all these players and just put it together. And it's a scenario now where you're just happy you got in. Where coming into the year with all those players I mentioned, you were talking World Series or bust. That was the goal. And now it's just, you're happy that you're here. What can you do with this opportunity? But now here we are again, talking about another injury in Chris Sale, and a major injury. And it's been reported that he may not even make the flight out to San Diego, that he may just stay back. It certainly doesn't sound like he's going to be able to pitch in game one. And as much as a grind as this season has been for the Braves, if you would have told me that after today they had Chris Sale for game one, Max Fried for game two, Ronaldo Lopez for a potential game three, I'd have felt pretty good about our chances going into San Diego and getting a win and winning that series. But I don't know who's pitching in game one. It might be me. I really don't know who's available, because not only did you have you had a doubleheader on Monday that you had to play, you used a lot of arms in that game. Your best relievers you used in both of those games. I mean, you had to throw Joe Jimenez and Raisel Iglesias in games 1 and 2. I don't know who's available to pitch, Javi. I really don't. It's going to be really interesting to see what the Braves do and who they throw out in game one. But again, it's just kind of the story of the season. You're happy you got in the postseason. You want to celebrate. But here we are again talking about another significant injury.
Yeah, and I think you really explained it really well. And I think that it just feels like the year from hell team. It's some people might immediately jump to, especially my listeners, will say, wow, that's just like the 2023 Padres. I would say the difference is that the Braves also got hurt. The 2023 Padres were actually remarkably healthy if you actually look back at them. It was just that they were historically bad in the clutch, the 2-12 in extra innings. And as we talked about on my show yesterday, then they rubber banded, slingshotted on a level that we haven't seen in a while to be the second best team by OPS plus ever in late and close games, ever in the history of baseball. Only 2009 Yankees were better. So that's been unbelievable. But with the Braves, I agree, Jake. Like, it might be tempting to say, wow, they all blew it, but outside like Matt Olson, you know what I mean? Matt Olson seems like the one player where that dude just straight up seems like he had a bad season. He played 160 games, but then Austin Riley, Michael Harris, Travis d'Arnaud, Ronald Acuna Jr. having the injury, even Ozzie Albies. I know he hasn't been always like the best bat in the team, but he had a bad season and also was hurt. And then you had Sean Murphy. He only played 70 games and was hurt. And then what it feels like, Jake, and I'm not trying to like rub salt in anything like that. It feels like the one like really great, wow, what a bonus that we got this season. Chris Sale, an older pitcher who, don't get me wrong, has been very good before. So it's not like the most shocking thing I've ever seen, but for him to be this back was such an amazing thing. And he's easily, in my opinion, the winner for the Cy Young Award. I would be shocked if he didn't win it at this point. For you to get that news, not just to have it happen late, but like literally a day before the playoffs. It's like very, look, sports can be cruel. Absolutely can be cruel. And I think this is a great example of it. And I'm with you, man. I don't fully know what the pitchers are going to be for the Braves. They had to use Raisel Iglesias, who not only got brought in yesterday for a 6-save situation, but gave up 6 runs instead. That's what happened instead. So that was a disaster for them. They burned their closer. They burned a lot of their pitchers. And they don't even have their number one ace. So yes, I would say that as of right now, the vibes don't seem that great. In Atlanta lands, it seems. I mean, maybe the Falcons are doing all right, but when it comes to the Braves, it does not seem like the vibes are good. But I also like what you said, that given everything, making it to the postseason, I don't think that that's like a horrible outcome, right? Like, at least they made it in, given all of the bad stuff that's happened to them this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just kind of the way you have to take it. Obviously, the Braves are going in there and they're saying all the right things. We got the squad to get it done, and they do. Look, they have really good pitching.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, can you survive game one so that you can get to that good pitching so you can kind of reset after Monday? And then if you do drop the first game, are you able to win 2 straight in San Diego? Because, they're certainly not going to lay down in that first one, but the odds are definitely against them in that first one, not knowing who's going to pitch. They may have to call up somebody from AAA, maybe an Ian Anderson, who has good postseason experience, but hasn't pitched in the big league since 2022. Maybe a Bryce Elder, who was an all-star last year, but then has been terrible since then. Maybe an AJ Smith-Shawver, who's still, very young and had up and down moments in the big leagues. It's just, who's it going to be, and is it going to be enough? And can you get enough from an offense that has struggled? You talked about the Padres and their turnaround in clutch situations. The Braves have been dreadful with runners in scoring position this year. I mean, just absolutely awful. Anytime you get a runner on, it's a running meme now amongst Braves country. You get a runner on third with less than 2 outs. The other team's got them right where they want them. And it's just been awful and frustrating to watch this season. So again, I still believe in this team, and I believe they have a puncher's chance if they can get to game 2 and be okay pitching wise. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't feel great. Like I said, you punch your ticket to the postseason, and just me as a fan, yeah, I wanted to be excited. I was glad to see my team there, but you had to deal with the Chris Sale news, and now you feel like you're limping into the postseason, and it doesn't feel like you have the best chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to break down more of that and talk a little bit about the Padres side of things, especially the pitching, because their playoff rotation has been announced. And we're going to talk about it because unlike the Braves, they are looking pretty good in that department. But is it going to be enough? Because the Braves have made some crazy runs before, specifically their World Series year. So we're going to talk about that, guys, in just a second. But first, I must talk to you about the title sponsor of this podcast, who's got the grand spanking banner in the top right corner. That is our good friends over at PrizePicks, and here is the thing, ladies and gentlemen. On top of PrizePicks just being simply the best app ever, okay, let's just be very clear. Tens of millions of members, 10 million members and more and counting. All you have to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks, and it's really great. It's available, and you can get on the action in more than 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. So you Atlanta Braves fans out there, you are covered. They have injury insurance. So, like, for example, if based on the Braves' luck this year, if Ozzy Albies was to come up, you bet on him to get a couple hits, he gets hurt and doesn't have the rest of his at-bats, you actually are okay on that regard. That it doesn't count as a loss in your lineup because you did not have the full at-bats and whatnot. They've got all sorts of deals all the time, and there was a Caleb Williams deal recently. It's really great. They've got all sorts of stuff, and you could also play alongside some of their community members like Drewski, Joe Budden, and MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley. It's really great. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. How about that, folks? Download the app today and again, use that code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Let's go, people. Go on the PrizePicks. It's great. And with that, everybody, we are back here, thriving and vibing. It's a segment number 2 of this Locked On Padres, Locked On Braves crossover extravaganza. Remember, go subscribe, Locked On Braves, Locked On Padres, at Javapeno, at Shortstop Ball on Twitter, respectively. Now, with the Padres, their playoff rotation has been announced for this series. It is set to be Michael King in Game 1, followed by Joe Musgrove in Game 2, and then in Game 3, Dylan Cease. So that might be a little bit surprising for people that Dylan Cease, the super strikeout machine, is going to be the Game 3 starter as opposed to Joe Musgrove, who only came back like a month ago. The difference, though, is I love this rotation. Michael King basically has been the consistency god. This is a guy who's going to finish top 5 in Cy Young voting this year. Frankly, I think he could be 3 or 4. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, especially with some other guys like Imanaga falling off as the season progressed. Basically, one bad month all season long. That's it. He gave up a lot of home runs at the beginning of the season, and this isn't some fluke thing. This guy has had an incredible run, upping his pitch usage. He's got a devastating changeup that is definitely going to be hard for the Braves to hit, and I'm curious to see, obviously, who the Braves starting pitcher ends up being, but Michael King has been pretty diamond all season long. Just to give you an idea, Jake, and you Braves fans, in the month of April, he had a 4.7 ERA. Then after that, every month after that, 3, 2.67, 1.82, 2.73, 1.57, all together with a high strikeout rate that is only one notch below Dylan Cease. So excellent stuff. Makes sense. He's been the consistency guy. And then you've got Joe Musgrove, who, yes, he just came back, but he's Joe Musgrove, and he's had a lot of playoff success, namely against the team that the Braves just played yesterday, the Mets. And I'll never forget when those silly people on SNY started crying and perpetrating the lies spread by Buck Showalter that he was cheating. Like, absolutely preposterous. And I'll never forget that the media people actually ran with it. I'm like, really, guys? Really, SNY? Really? So that was a lot of fun. And then, of course, Dylan Cease, who was a godsend. AJ Preller made that trade like 2 seconds before the season started. So this rotation, I think, and this isn't even being biased, as of where we stand right now, is easily the biggest advantage that the Padres have over the Braves in this series because of the absence of Chris Sale. I think that matchup, King versus Sale, was going to be, dare I say, one of the best matchups in the whole playoffs. To start, at least for Game 1. I really, really do, because those are 2 top 5 Cy Young guys, especially the Cy Young winner, presumptively. So that is really a shame. But Jake, in terms of the other pitchers that we may see in this series, I know we don't know exactly the order yet. What do you think we can expect for Padres and Braves fans alike?
Yeah, I mean, you say that would be the advantage for the Padres, and I would say, or probably, unbiased or biased, not whether or not, if Chris Sale were healthy, I'd say that'd be the advantage for the Braves, because that's been their advantage all year long, has been the starting pitching. And if you could roll out a Chris Sale, Max Fried, and a Ronaldo Lopez in games 1, 2, and 3, they could go up against, a Michael King, a Joe Musgrove, and a Dylan Cease. But as we started out in the first segment talking about, without Chris Sale, I don't know how the Braves get it done, because what their success they've had this year has been built on great starting pitching, just enough offense, and turn it over to Joe Jimenez and Raisel Iglesias, who have been a little bit shaky down the stretch themselves here. But that's been the recipe for the Braves all year long. And I just don't know how they succeed without that. And it does look like it is going to be Max Fried in game 2 and potentially Ronaldo Lopez, who, oh, by the way, had to throw an inning on Monday as well to help the Braves get through the second game of that doubleheader. But basically we'll treat it as a bullpen session. So he should still be good for game 3 if necessary. But yeah, it is unfortunate because I think we were, set to see, 3 really great pitching matchups. But without Chris Sale being available, it really puts the Braves at a huge disadvantage in that game 1. Michael King, we talked about him on the postcast after the Braves clinched on Monday night, and a lot of people forget about him, especially here on the East Coast. We obviously don't stay up till the mid mornings to watch some of those games out there. And he was just kind of that guy in the Juan Soto deal, the guy that went to the Padres in the Soto deal. But you look at the numbers, and as you said, outside of April, he's been one of the better pitchers in all of baseball and very consistent. So interested to see what he can bring. Like I said, when I saw the rotation, I was surprised. I would have thought, Dylan Cease, he's a big strikeout pitcher. Surely he's going to be able to get game 1, a guy that a lot of Braves fans wanted this past offseason. I did many a podcast talking about a potential Dylan Cease trade, but it was the Padres who went out and got him, and he was in that race. He tried to prevent Chris Sale from getting the Triple Crown for pitchers. He was right there with him in that strikeout race, but good pitching, obviously, that's going to be the key to this series. It's just, again, without the Braves having somebody to go in game 1, it really just takes that away a little bit.
Yeah, not gonna lie. Like, and to me, some people were asking me like, who do you think is the easier matchup? You know what I mean? Because my thing was, well, I love Lindor, so I don't want to play the Mets. You know what I mean? But then in terms of who I don't want to face, it's the Braves because of the pitching. And because this is a team that's literally shown us before. They brought in Jorge Soler, they brought in Jack Peterson, they brought in some players, and they still have that. The names are there. And I know that isn't a great way of analyzing, but when the postseason comes in, I feel like you got to throw a lot of the stats out the window. And it wouldn't shock me if Matt Olson hits 2 home runs in the series, right? Like that could totally happen. That's not out of possibility. I just think that having stars is really, really important. And the Braves still have them, even if they've underperformed this year, except for the starting pitching thing. And then when it comes to bullpen, we talked about Raisel Iglesias being used. The Padres bullpen has been one of the best, if not the best in baseball, especially since the trade deadline when they acquired Jason Adam, Brian Hoeing, and Tanner Scott. All of them have been really, really good lately. And also what is expected is that Yu Darvish is expected to be available out of the bullpen if necessary. So I expect that could be if let's say one of these starters gets blown up, I imagine that this could be a piggyback start sort of situation where Darvish then it basically becomes a start for him. So I think that's what to expect. But yeah, man, I mean, just looking at the numbers, the Braves 15th in batting average, 16th on base, 16th in runs scored, but 10th in slugging and 4th in home runs. So this is a team that does get hits, enough of them when they matter. Even if the final box score is they only got 4 hits, they're usually home runs. So this is still a team that I am scared of and more scared of than the Mets a little bit, because while the lineup hasn't been as good and the Mets do have a magic, weird, like dream season vibe to them, similar to the Padres, the Braves, I'm still scared of that team. They've got a lot of playoff resume over there. So it's sure to be a big series. Can you tell us about some of the under radar sort of players, I guess, in the lineup and possibly even the bullpen?
Yeah, I mean, the bullpen matchup is pretty interesting. I really love what the Padres have done this year and the arms that they've gone out to get to really solidify that bullpen. The Braves have pretty much remained steady in the bullpen all year long, and those guys have been really good up until the last couple of weeks. I mean, it's really been a formula like I talked about. Give me 6 innings and then turn it over to Pierce Johnson, Joe Jimenez, and Raisel Iglesias. But all 3 of those guys really struggled in game 1 on Monday, and they've had a couple of hiccups here lately that we're just not used to. But if those guys are on, they're part of, what's been the 3rd best bullpen, at least based on ERA, all year. So again, it's been a really good bullpen. You have other arms. Dylan Lee, he'd probably be the 4th arm out of there. Daysbel Hernandez is a young pitcher who has shown a lot here down the stretch as well. Aaron Bummer, a good lefty to come in to get a ground ball for you. So they have some good pieces out there if you can get it to them. But on the offensive side of things, I think if you're a Braves fan and you've watched this season, you're not going to have great feelings going into the postseason about the offense. It's been a struggle. If you just would have gotten, average offense, and I know some of the stats you read, they say middle of the pack. That's because they went off in the first 3 weeks of April, and they've been carried by that pretty much all year long. This offense has been bottom 10 in baseball pretty much since the end of April. And it's why that they've had to fight till the last day to get into the postseason. But saying all that, you talked about it earlier. Some of the struggles of players this season, and Matt Olson has been a regression, although he ended up with a 790 OPS with 28 homers and 98 RBI. So not an awful season. Marcell Ozuna has been good, but he was really struggling this past week. And then, Ozzie Albies, he's been struggling, but then he had a 5 RBI game in game one. So Michael Harris, he's had the injuries, been up and down, but he's been hot lately. So if you're a Braves fan, I think the one thing you have to be hoping for is that we have not seen, first of all, we haven't seen this offense healthy for a long stretch. We haven't had the same lineup since day one of the season where Sean Murphy got hurt and was out for 2 months. I forgot to mention him earlier. But if you can just get this team rolling, you know what they're capable of. Like you said, there's still names in this lineup, names that have done it before. And it's a new season when you get to October. It is. The Braves have seen that in the last 3 years. It is a new season. It does not matter what you've done over 162, which is crazy from a baseball purist standpoint that we just kind of anyway, it's a new season.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you.
It's a brand new season when you get to October. It does not matter what happened over 5-6 months. And if you can just get hot, and this team is capable of doing that. Michael Harris is capable of doing that. Matt Olson's capable of doing that. Marcell Ozuna is capable of doing that. Up and down the lineup, there are still guys here that can get the job done. And I think as a Braves fan, that's just what you're hoping for. We haven't seen it all year. Can they get it together now? And can they get the job done? Ramon Laureano is a guy that's been really big. He had a home run in game one of the doubleheader. He has been a guy that stepped up in a huge way for this Braves team that you'll see kind of near the bottom of the lineup. But as you said, names are still there, and we know what these guys are capable of. We just haven't seen it consistently enough this season, and they're going to have to step up, especially if they're going to have any chance in game one. It's going to be because that offense was able to step up and help out the pitching.
Absolutely, man. We're going to talk about some of the Padres players and their lineup because we haven't mentioned them yet. Somehow, we haven't talked about the Padres lineup, which has been one of the most dynamic and most exciting in all of baseball. But first, before we talk about that, guys, I need to talk to you about another one of our lovely, lovely sponsors, and that is our good friends over at FanDuel. NFL fans, guess what? Now is the time to get a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, maybe you're saying, you know what? I think the Vikings are really going to pull this out. I don't care about the Packers. I believe in Darnold. Boom. You could do that on FanDuel. And in baseball, let's say the Padres are down by 4 or vice versa. And you're like, you know what? I don't buy it. The other team, they've got all the names. They've got all the stars. They're going to make a comeback. You can do that. You can also view live play-by-play footage, or not footage, but live play-by-play updates and so much more, checking out the latest stats, where you place your bets, the same page on FanDuel. It's really just a nifty setup they've got there. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So go check that out, guys. That's FanDuel.com. Go check that out. And of course, we're not done yet. I got to talk about another. It's playoff time. I got to give you guys the best stuff. And the last of our best stuff is our good friends over at Gametime. What I love about Gametime is this. They don't just cover baseball. They've got basketball. They've got football. They've got all sort of sporting events and other things too, like concerts and theater and comedy stuff. They've got tickets all over the place. And let me tell you, they've got flash deals. They've got zone deals, which is like, you pick out a zone, they pick out a ticket. They'll give you a nice deal on that. And they even have a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting picks overall much easier for your favorite live events. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of tickets. So don't worry about that. They have you covered. And again, if you're even just a fan of deals, they have them all the time. If you don't know you're going to be available, that's what I like using Gametime for. If you're just finding out at the last second, tickets can get even cheaper. So go check that out, guys. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account after downloading that app. Redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. What time is it? It is game time. And just like that, everybody, thriving and vibing into the final segments. The last time you'll hear from Jake and I forever before this series. Not true. We're going to be recapping all the games, of course, but to talk about the Padres lineup, we just heard it about the Braves. This is why I think a lot of people, and I've been looking online, and I don't like jinxing it or anything like that. This is probably a big reason why the Padres are one of the favorites to win the series, especially after the Chris Sale news, which is, yes, they've got the great pitching. Yes, they've got the great bullpen, but they also have the lineup. And honestly, it's full. It's a lineup that has had some stars underperform just a little bit, like your Manny Machado, like your Fernando Tatis Jr. That sounds weird that Fernando Tatis Jr. has a 135 WRC plus and he's underperforming, but alas, he has been at least a little bit, got a little bit unlucky. But that then, I think some people might be wondering, which is a fair thing to wonder, which is this team comeback wins all season. Can they keep doing that? That's usually not a sustainable thing. And that's totally fair. I will add that OPS stat that I read you before, the first place team is the 2009 Yankees, who ended up winning the World Series. So it's not like this is something that always goes extinct and whatnot. But I will say that having the good starting pitching and the bullpen helps subsidize that. It helps give you another edge just in case it's not an offense only team. But even still, you look at this team, they've got a rookie of the year contender in Jackson Merrill. You've still got Tatis. You've got Manny Machado, who basically outside those first 2 months, right? Michael King had one bad month. Manny Machado could not hit for basically 2 months. He's been back ever since, unlike another rival third baseman on the St. Louis Cardinals. Manny Machado is not washed yet. So shouts out to him and all my Cardinals friends out there. RIP to the Cardinals franchise. It appears they're going the route of being cheap. But alas, that's a topic for another day. With this lineup, you've also got some solid players. Luis Arraez is a fascinating one. 111 WRC plus on the season. However, he was hurt for a lot of his tenure with the Padres. Like genuinely hurt. He had some thumb thing. And lately, over the last month, this guy's been awesome. Everybody saw he made history 3 times winning the batting title with 3 different teams. It's never been done before. This is the type of player that could hit 700 in 2 playoff series because he just puts the ball in play. This is the type of player that could be a playoff superstar, right? If guys like Eric Hosmer can be playoff superstars, then definitely Luis Arraez. That's just the type of player he is. He can also go over, but the fact that he's always going to be a tough at bat, he's just someone that I see, Jake, being a guy that, Braves, it's a 1-run game. You're like, dang it. I got to face Arraez and then Profar, who is another player on this team, worst qualified player in all of baseball last year. All of a sudden has the best season, 10 years into his career, 139 WRC plus, good for a 4-win season. Unbelievable stuff in that regard. And then you get into the Tatis and the Machado and the Merrill, the stars. But the fact that you can start it off with these 2 pests, one of which Profar, who seems to just be this like irritant. Every team gets mad at this guy, sometimes occasionally justifiably, but for the most part, I never understand it. And then there's Arraez, who's just always going to put the bat on the ball. That's an annoying combination of hitters to face off. So that's going to be really interesting. And then not to mention, they've got some depth too. David Peralta filled in greatly. Nice veteran bat, filled in greatly while Fernando Tatis Jr. was out with an injury. And then Donovan Solano, Donnie Barrels himself. Look, we could say for another podcast what's wrong with the sport and owners not spending money. Donovan Solano should not have been picked up by the Padres. Like, there's no way that this team that already had a lot was just like, oh, yeah, sure, we'll take the guy who just only has hit. That's it. That's all he's been doing. He's just hitting consistently and solidly for like 4 seasons now. Just picked him up off of like waivers, basically. I don't know how that happened, but he's another under the radar bet. And Kyle Higashioka, he has entered a little bit of a slump. It looks like his highs of earlier in the season have seemed to calm down a little bit, but he's good for an extra base hit. He's got some power. So while he's mostly going to strike out, he does have some power. But yeah, this Padres lineup is lethal. So even if they aren't able to make crazy comeback wins, I just love the fact that it's a fully deep lineup, deepest lineup since I've been covering the team, and they've got the pitching and the bullpen to kind of subsidize it.
I think the one thing when I look at the Padres offense, and I think will be an interesting matchup, Padres had the fewest strikeouts in all of baseball this year. Braves pitching had the most strikeouts in all of baseball this year. So what kind of gives in that scenario? I'll tell you the offense that really gave Braves pitching a lot of fits this year. Teams like the Nationals, teams like the Diamondbacks, teams that put the ball in play, but can also push you with their speed too. The Braves lost the season series to the Nationals because of that, because they don't strike out and they get on base. They run a lot. The Brewers are another team like that as well. The Braves got swept at home, just got dominated. First time all year really that they got dominated, and they do have that same type of style. I don't know if the Padres have the speed to go along with that. I know Tatis, Jackson Merrill, those guys do, but that ability to put the ball in play and do so in those clutch situations, that's one thing about this offense that scares me a little bit going up against the Braves pitching, which dominates on getting those strikeouts. And if they can't get those, what does that look like? Can they get that weak contact?
Yeah, I think you summed it up really well. The Padres have some amount of speed. Obviously, you have the Tatis and Merrill, like you mentioned, and you've got some decent guys like Xander Bogaerts. He's not the best bat. One thing I will say about him, hitting into productive outs lately. I'm still worried about him long term. That is still a question mark for this team. But hey, he's been in the postseason before, and he's won a World Series twice. So I like to at least imagine that is definitely not a negative to have a player on your team that, even though he has underperformed greatly this year, we talked about it with the Braves, so I think it's at least fair to bring that up for Bogaerts. And yeah, this is a team that has sent it. They have had some double steal moments this year. They did lose Ha-Seong Kim. He's out for the rest of the season, will not be in the playoffs, I'm pretty sure either. That is unfortunate, wishing him the best, but that was another base runner for them. He was really good at that. Really curious to see what happens with him in the offseason. But yeah, man, I mean, look, this is the end of the podcast, and I'm just going to say I'm excited, but also the playoffs stink, man. And here's what I mean by that. It's not that fun when your team is in it. Like, especially the wild card. I think the divisional series, because it's a best of 5, there's a little bit more of like, okay, I don't feel like the series is over if we lose the first game, right? That's the problem. You know what I mean? For the ALC and NLCS.
It's a bit longer conversation, but the NLDS needs to go to 7 games now too. Because even as somebody that's gotten bounced in the NLDS the last 2 years, I need another game that, hey, if you lose the first one, it doesn't just automatically feel like it's over, because it even feels like that in the NLDS.
Yeah, I'm kind of with it, man. And it's baseball. You know, like baseball, I think that there is something to be said for having some time off after a routine that, you know what I mean? Like, it's such a routine mental sport. In the NBA and football, I don't want to hear it. You guys need a break. Like that is absolutely huge. But for baseball, I'm like, there's something to be said for continuing to play. And not to mention, I'm with you. At least make it best of 5 for all of them, like or something like that. I just think it's better, right? Like and NLDS 7 games as well. There's just something about it. Like let's figure it out. Cut out some regular season games or something. I don't know. But actually, yeah, that would probably appease the owners. Just take out. All right, lose some regular season games, but we add playoff games. So I feel like that would be good. Anyway, think about it. You phony, if we had a living, breathing commissioner in this league, my God. But yeah, man, this is really nerve-wracking. It reminds me of like, yeah, the Padres are bad last year, but at least I could just be a hater and be like, wow, I hope the Dodgers lose. And that always ends up turning out well for me, and then I'm happy. So we'll see how this all goes down, man. Either way, on both Locked On Padres and Locked On Braves, we will be giving our live reactions, not just with our tweets and whatnot, but we will be posting updates and, of course, posting our recap episodes, which will be a blast over these next 3 days. You don't have to wait around. That I do like about baseball. We don't have to wait 3 days between game 1 and 2. What is this, the NBA? No, we're good on that regard. So looking forward to it. But Jake, any final words until we enter the brave, until we enter the storm?
No, just looking forward to get it going. Like I said, it's the vibes have changed for this team this year. It's no longer World Series or bust. We're just happy to be here. We'll see what happens, see what we can do.
And Padres fans are very much happy to be here, but we'd like the magic to continue rolling. I guess we'll see if it does. Everybody, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres and Locked On Braves podcast. Remember, follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, and also follow my man Jake over at Shortstop Ball on Twitter. Subscribe to both podcasts on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast platforms. And until next time, stay safe, my Friar Faithful homies, and stay brilliant, my Braves brethren. We'll see you next time.